when I talk to people, the number one thing that I hear as a concern is that they don't have the money. And for some people, the notion of spending a couple $100,000 every quarter might be a little bit outside of their financial comfort zone. And so the good news is that you don't have to have the money. You just need to have access to the money. So I'm going to share with you the ways that I personally funded my flips, as well as a comprehensive list of what we call creative financing or thinking outside the box. So our four funding categories are what I just talked about. So is there a shark in your tank, impotent investments, throw me a line, and getting outside the box. Now, before I dig deep, let's talk about your financial comfort zone. Most people aren't very comfortable asking for money. We all have an association to money and wealth, which is generally reflected in how those things, money and wealth, will show up in our lives. So I'd like you to think about these two questions and really, what would it feel like for you guys to have this association to money where you are thinking of abundance and never thinking of scarcity? So the first one is, what is the most money you have asked for from anyone? And I remember when I was working in the martial arts business and we started charging in full tuition, which was $10,000. I had never asked anyone for $10,000. It was different buying a house or buying a car, but to actually ask a person for money, that was a very different concept for me. And I'm happy to say that my financial blueprint has changed significantly. And just last week, I was in a bank and I was able to ask for a line of credit of $3 million without flinching. And the banker, he said, "Oh, that would be great." And so it's a very different relationship to have to money and what money means to you. So I do have a book to recommend. I listen to the audiobook. I'm a big audiobook person. And so I'm going to recommend this book. I of course recommend listening to audio because you can listen to it in your car. You don't have to, worry about trying to take extra time. We call it net time, which is no extra time, and that's listening to your audio university. So the book I most recommend for this is Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. And it's a really great intro to how is your financial blueprint set and how is your life showing up in relation to how you perceive money. So that's a really important thing. If we don't get that handled, if we don't get the relationship that you have to money handled before you start investing, there's this idea that we have a financial thermostat. So whatever our thermostat is set at, if we don't change the thermostat, we will keep going to that. So if our thermostat is set at 72 degrees, then we will go back to 72 degrees. Well, the same thing is true for our finances. If our financial thermostat is set at making $100,000 a year or $50,000 a year, even when we start bringing in more income, our thermostat, if we don't change it and if we don't change our blueprint, our thermostat will go back to what it was. So what we want to do here with studying wealth is to change our blueprint, change our thermostat so that we expect to make a higher income so that we can have greater wealth, which means greater time and greater money. The real beauty of real estate investing is that there is more than enough profit to go around. So this is a concept that took me a while to grasp. I started slow with really minimal borrowing, thinking that if I just used my own money, I would get the best return. I couldn't imagine how sharing the profits would mean that I would get a better return. So we started off very, very slow in the business. What I've learned now is that is not so. That was part of my scarcity mindset that was eking into my business. And it probably cost me a couple $1 million and probably a few years of working harder than I needed to be. So borrowing, better known to investors like us as leveraging or using OPM, which is other people's money, is the secret tool not only for getting started, which is really important if you're not sure where the money is going to come from. It's a great way to get started, but also for building that exponential wealth. No matter where you're starting, there will be a point when leverage is the way to grow that exponential wealth. So part of your homework is going to be to create a list of your own personal financial resources, sources of leverage, potential financial partners and banking relationships, whether you have them now or if I help you to establish those banking relationships. So I'm going to send you a form. It's called Finding Your Funding Investors Workbook. Again, you can also download that from the website, probably in about a week. So it's not finished yet, but in a week it'll be downloadable on flipchick.net. So when we began investing in real estate, we didn't have enough to fund our first deal. So we did, however, have friends and family that trusted us and were happy to give us a high, to have us give them a high interest rate for their short-term loan. So after you get a few flips under your belt, if you decide to continue to leverage using OPM, it's really cool when they start calling you, hey, do you need another loan? Do you need another loan? That's, it's a very different dynamic when you shift from you're asking for money to now people are asking you to invest because they trust you and they have credibility in you. So when we talk about, is that a shark in your tank or are you just happy to see me? The loan sharks, also known as hard money, I'll explain that. It's really just, it's paying a higher percentage rate and points on a short-term loan. It's definitely not a long-term strategy, but it's a getting started strategy, and it's a bridging the gap strategy. And then friends and family, there's going to be people that you know, whether you realize it or not. There's people that would love to get a 5, 10, or 15% return, and we love to get money at 5, 10, or 15% if we can turn it into 30, 50, sometimes 100% over the time period that we've borrowed it. And then I also like to look into ninja networking, I call it. And the reality, and I didn't realize this before I was a real estate investor, that there are groups of people that are out there networking. Some are out there looking at wholesaling houses. Some are out there looking at flipping houses. Some are out there picking up rental properties. And some, and more than you might think, are out there looking for somebody to invest their money. Just weekend before last, I was at a meetup. It was a RIA for a friend of mine who's here in the Chicagoland area. And I'm in the hallway and just started chatting it up with some person that I met. And by the end of the conversation, which was a 2 or 3 hour conversation, he said, well, I have about $1 million that I need to invest, and I'm not looking to do it myself. I'm here to find somebody who I trust who can invest this for me. So, as you guys are learning and becoming credible in this industry and in this world that we live in, you will be able to find money. So I'm encouraging you that if it seems like it's not reasonable that somebody would walk up to you and give you access to $1 million, trust me, I thought the same thing just a couple years ago, and it's actually happening for me now. So you're utilizing other people's money. The next slide I'm showing you it's part of the workbook that I'm going to send you guys. So just to start jogging your memory and start thinking, who do I know that maybe isn't getting a good return on their money, and how you can help them. And really, that's what you're doing. You are giving somebody an opportunity to earn a higher interest rate than they could possibly do anywhere else. Networking, again, we're talking about RIAs, meetups, Facebook pages. I'm going to bring in, when we do our 2-day weekend, I'm going to talk a little bit more about a program called REI Black Book. It's, in my opinion, the best real estate networking tool that's out there. And I'm going to share that with you guys and show you guys a little bit on how to use that. Next slide, impotent investments and flaccid funds. That does not sound fun. I don't care who you are. So almost everybody has some sort of money that they've put aside that really isn't earning its keep. So maybe it's a CD or a bond your grandma set up for you. What I want to do here is just give you a quick snapshot comparison of the return that you're getting on that money. So if you have $100,000 invested, then you have it in a savings account, and let's call it 0.2%, which I think is very realistic. Then over the course of a year, you're making $200. Well, not only is that a ridiculous amount of money, I could barely take my family out to dinner for that, but when you look at inflation, and I just looked this up for you guys, inflation over the last 12 months was calculated at 2.1%. So most interest rates are not even close to keeping up with inflation. So in that scenario, in a savings account, you're actually losing $1,900 per year. So when people, they say, oh, I need to have money in savings, that's a really, really dangerous place to be, because when you have money that is dwindling every single year until it's at the point where it's not going to support you, as opposed to looking at how can you create passive income, cash flowing income from your investments. So let's say you're a little bit better. You're in a CD. Now you're making $2,000 a year. Remember, inflation is costing us $1,900 a year. So you're still upside down $100, a little bit better than being upside down $1,900, but it still sucks. So we mentioned already the hard money. One of the players in the real estate investing game is the hard money lender. And a typical setup is that a hard money lender will charge points up front, and it might be 4 points, 3 to 5 points is typical. And then 15% is again a typical interest rate for them to charge. Now, if you've got your $100,000 invested as a hard money lender, you're going to be making $19,000 a year, or in the upper teen thousands of dollars per year instead of a couple thousand or a couple $100. And what really gets me excited is what we're doing, which is the flip and flow strategy. So your return for flipping 4 houses, and I'm being a little bit conservative when I look at these numbers. So your return for 4 houses with a modest $30,000 return on each house will get you better than doubling your money. So when I look at all the different options of where I put my money, I'm excited about hard money because that's me finding somebody who's credible and I don't have to do anything and I can get a good return. And I'm excited about the flip and flow because I can get an amazing return with effort on my part, but that effort is certainly worth the return that I'm getting. The next page is, this is a little bit of what you guys will do eventually is fill out a personal financial statement, a PFS, with the bank, and it's good to have just for your own purposes, but this is going to help you get started with that and get a snapshot of what money you have sitting out there that you could potentially utilize and turn into passive income and a strong cash flowing position. Again, this is going to be part of the workbook that I send you guys. Just wanted to show you a quick snapshot of that. When you see it in the workbook, this is what you're going to be working on. Part of your homework. Let's talk about lines of credit. There are 2 types of credit. You have personal credit and you've got business credit. When you have a few properties under your belt, it makes a whole lot of sense to get a business line of credit. There's some liability purposes to that, but also what happens is the banks are very eager to loan money. That's the business that they're in. They want to be selling products. And again, that's sort of a different mindset when you're working in business banking versus consumer banking. As a consumer, we go in and we cross our fingers and hope that they're going to look at us as good enough. As a business, we go out and we interview banks and we decide which one we want to work with based on what products they have available for us. And by products, I mean what lending types they have. If they have a line of credit for us, an equity loan, there's a lot of different ways to get money from the banks. And business bankers are very eager to be selling their products. So personal line of credit, that's something that's secured by personal property of some sort. Usually it's a house. There's some other things that you could secure that with. The home equity line of credit, I'll just explain how the HELOC works. That's based on the equity that you have in a personal residence. I'm a big fan of don't have a lot of equity in your personal residence. Doesn't mean don't have a lot of equity in a lot of assets that are worth a lot, but why have that tied up in your personal residence when you're not getting the best benefit from a tax and liability perspective? So if you have a $500,000 house, the fair market value, and you have an 80% loan to value, that means they're going to loan you 80% of the $500,000. So the bank is willing to give you, again, this is their business. They want to do this. In this case, $400,000. So if you already owe $200,000, then this means you have access to another $200,000. What's nice about the line of credit is that you can borrow against it and then pay it off. And it's typically a pretty low interest rate, certainly much lower than a hard money loan, but it's very flexible, the line of credit. And when you show a good history, then that's very helpful for you to get more lines of credit. And we talked a little bit already about the business line of credit. The business line of credit, I've mentioned about how much money you're comfortable asking for. Well, when I was meeting with the banker a couple weeks ago, he was looking for me to ask for a high amount of money. After he looked at what our position was, he's eager to give me as much money as possible based on the assets in our business. And it's less about me than it is about the business. So that's a really great position to be in. Now, there's a lot of options to think outside of the box. So I've been spending a lot of time working with different programs, different people to come up with ways to acquire properties or to acquire funds for properties that make your bottom line numbers even better. So for example, if you are a first-time home buyer, which just means that you haven't had a home for 3 years, it's not a one-time first-time home buyer. There's some confusion sometimes that first-time home buyer sounds like it's my first house and that's it, I'm done till I die. But in most cases, it's every 3 years. If you've been out of a home for 3 years, you qualify as a first-time home buyer again. Or if you're just purchasing a home as an owner-occupant, there may be money available to you either in the form of grants or money to put down on the house. I was on the phone yesterday with a person in our city, who is in charge of grants. And we spoke about one particular grant. We talked about half a dozen grants that those of us who are in real estate investing are eligible for a lot of these. But this one particular grant, if the home is owner occupied, then they can get 75% of the cost of a rehab, up to $20,000 in the form of a grant. So there's money available to be fixing up these houses. I have another friend, he's out in Indiana. I'm probably going to have him come to the 2-day and speak about cash flowing properties. But he is picking up properties from the city. For me, in my town, they don't do this, but there are a lot of cities that actually own real estate that will sell the real estate for $1 to somebody who's going to fix it up. So this is very outside the box thinking, and it's not what the average person knows is available, but that's, again, the beauty of being part of a real estate investment community. And so I challenge you guys to, when you come upon something and you think that it's not going to work for you, or this is a great idea, but my scenario is different, I promise you that if you're motivated and if you really commit to this, that there is a way for us to find something for you to get started. And once you get started, there's just no reason to stop if you get started, because you'll see what the returns are. So, if your liabilities are greater than your assets, in other words, if you aren't yet wealthy and you're working at a job, then let's get that sorted first. Let's make sure that we're replacing your income. That's our first level of strategy. And we want to make sure that we can do that with this passive income. So again, I'm gonna send you guys a homework assignment, which is Finding Your Funding Investors Workbook. And that's going to be the baseline of where you are, because it's really important that you can't get where you want to go if you don't know where you are. So this is really what you guys to be thinking about. I know I talked to a couple of you guys about having a vision board, about making sure that you're really clear on the why of doing real estate investing. And now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of the how-to. And the financial blueprint that you have is critically important. This is a money business. So you need to know where you are, and you need to know where you want to go, so that we can help you get there step by step by step. So I'm going to open up the line for comments, conversation, questions, and I'm going to minimize. All right. Everybody should be unmuted. If you guys have craziness going on in the background, feel free to mute yourself again.